Yeah.
A question about languages and education.
Mm-hmm.
We proposed the idea of the Endeavour scholarships at the university level, but my question is more about what would the coalition government do to encourage the study of Asian languages before university? I'm talking about primary school, because that's the ideal time to learn another language when the kids are really young and they absorb everything like a sponge. So were the coalition come back into power, what would they do to promote Asian languages?
Well, that's precisely where I was heading with my focus on language teachers, because you can have a whole raft of students dying to learn a language in primary school, but unless you've got the teachers for primary school, it's not going to happen. So that's what I identified in my study of why aren't more Australian students studying a second language. The lack of specialised language teachers, particularly in primary schools, was the biggest hurdle. So that's what I said about addressing, and I would continue to do that. Not enough primary school teachers have efficiency in a language. Not enough secondary school teachers have any proficiency in a language. So you have to have the teachers who have the passion and the enthusiasm and the ability to be available for primary schools to teach it as a subject. There are too many primary schools across Australia that have no capacity at all to teach a language, so it's not even offered. So I would continue to focus on ensuring that it was part of the curriculum, because I set up the idea of a national curriculum, and we were starting in year 12 and we would have been working down. And I agree with you absolutely that if students aren't exposed to the magic of a second language early on, it can be very difficult to pick it up in year 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like science. Unless you're exposed to the magic and the mystery and the wonder of science at an early age, you're not going to pick it up in year 10 and then go on and study at university. It's got to be something that comes through primary school. So I would continue to focus on the curriculum development and also on teacher proficiency. And I think that way, if you had the teachers part of the curriculum, you'd get the students. Yeah.
The coalition support a more stringent measure like they have in the French system where languages are compulsory up until late secondary school?
Well, I would certainly, I don't know about compulsory, but I would certainly enhance our curriculum to make sure, see it's hard.
France, it's
well, hang on.
A language is compulsory, but you can't do two languages.
Well, English isn't even compulsory in year 12 in Queensland. We don't even have English as a compulsory language. So we'd have to start by making English compulsory. I think that would be a good start. And then a second language compulsory to year 12 would be a great idea. The challenge and the pushback you always get from educational experts is that we already have a crowded curriculum. And if we're going to have more scientists and mathematicians, and we're going to have more people on the science side of the ledger, which is where we're missing out, engineers and the like, then you've got to make sure that students are studying maths and science and physics and chem and the like. So they've got to be available. I happen to believe that you do need a strong liberal arts education available as well. So you've got to be doing history and geography and social sciences and that side of things. To make language compulsory, they'll say, well, something will have to go. That's what the educational specialist told me, something will have to go. If you make a second language compulsory, well, what would you do with other subjects? I happen to think that you could have a well-designed curriculum out of these silos and have a second language sort of as a, not an elective, but as something that you did at a particular level through primary and secondary. My concern about making it compulsory is, again, would we have the teachers to do it? If we made it compulsory, would we have the thousands of language teachers needed? Now, we currently don't. So even if I were to wave a wand tomorrow and say a second language is compulsory in all Australian schools, it would fail as a policy because you do not have the teachers to do it. So it's got to be a long-term thing, building up the interest, building up the capacity of teachers and gradually phasing it in until it becomes the norm. And I really do believe that business has and employers have a great deal to offer in this regard. if people value a second language, if you get more likely to get a job because you've got a second language, then it will flow through the educational system. Yeah.
This is a rather basic question here.
Fine.
You were discussing the point of introducing more language lessons into the primary schools and how that primary schools were lacking accessibility to a language being taught there due to maybe the lack of teachers or something, or interest. How would you, from experience of my past education, in my primary school, I learned in the time I was there basic Chinese, Spanish, Indonesian, and I think we had a little bit of Japanese.
Which school was this?
This was Lions Primary.
Pardon?
Lions Primary.
Yeah,
School?
Here in Canberra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist anymore, but
It's a very sad ending to what was going to be a beautiful story. Mm.
No. But basically what I'm asking is, with your planning of introducing a language as a compulsory academic role in a primary school, for example, what would the procedures be that you would have to go to ensure that that language will be taught will be accepted by the school community as a whole?
Well, see, this is the point. When I said, what language would it be? Obviously English. Let's make that compulsory. That'll be a good start.
Yes.
And then that's why you would say a second language. It doesn't necessarily follow that you would all learn Mandarin or Indonesian or Japanese, because we're talking about something that you will carry with you for life. And now that the study of language has more practical impact than it did when we studied Latin, for example, or even, French is more of a universal language, but German. Loved it, but, I don't think I've spoken a word of it, even when I've travelled through Germany. And that's probably just as well, too. But I think that your experience would certainly not happen across Australia. If you had an exposure to a number of languages in primary school, let me assure you that is not the norm.
I can't remember any of it anyway.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. But I think that's what I'm talking about, curriculum development. You might have the opportunity in primary school, for example, to have access to a number of languages. But again, I get back to the teachers. How many proficient language teachers do we have in Australia? I know we've put 500 through the Endeavour Fellowship program, 500, but that doesn't go far across 10,000 schools. So again, it's a question of whether the school community chooses, whether the state chooses, at what level. There might be certain languages that would be more useful than others. Maybe Mandarin is one. I know there was a stage when a lot of schools were teaching Indonesian, a lot of schools were teaching Japanese. But I think that it's fair to say that if you're proficient in, say, 2 languages, picking up a third would not be so hard. So maybe that's something that the educationalists could look at as well, a language that enables people to pick up another. But I don't think that school communities would get so worked up about it, do you think? I don't know. Like if you said, well, we're going to teach Japanese at this school, I guess the parents can choose not to send their child there if they don't want them to learn Japanese. But I wouldn't think that too many people would be concerned about it. I mean,
that's just a question that popped into my head.
No, it's not a basic question. I think it's a very good one. It's probably something that will challenge language experts and educationalists for a long time. Yeah, up the back.